My warmest morning greetings to all, especially to our school's division superintendent, Dr. Victoria V. Gazo, to our assistant schools division superintendent, Dr. Alina Dahay, our CID chief, Sir Ralph T. Kirog, our SGOD chief, Dr. Lorenzo O. Capasio, my fellow L&D team presenters, to everyone who are participants of this undertaking, again, good morning. Welcome to our Capability Development of Division Personnel and School Managers on Learning and Development System, which is slated for 4 days to commence today and to conclude on the 27th of November 2020. Taking a look on the framework of learning and development, the structure looks like a house or a building, where the roof is the governance and enabling mechanism, where there are also 5 big posts which represent the components of learning and development, where yours truly is tasked to present the deliverables under stage 2, which is learning and development planning. Likewise, the ground or the floor is represented by the katami, or known as the quality assurance, technical assistance, and monitoring and evaluation. Allow me to present to you the session objectives that this training is designed and directed to attain. Session objectives is composed of 9 items. We will learn on this as we progress the learning and development planning process. Session objective number 1. Explain the purpose, general guidelines, and quality standards of learning and development planning subsystem. Session objective number 2. Differentiate levels of learning and development planning. Session objectives number 3. Discuss the process of learning and development planning. Session objectives number 4. Discuss L&D plan elements. Likewise, session objective number 5. Discuss the value of establishing workplace development objectives, or known as WDOs. Session objectives number 6. Explain the process of formulating WDOs. And number 7. Describe the range and mix of learning and development modalities and intervention. Session objective number 9. Identify strengths and areas for enhancement of the office's learning and development planning subsystem. And session objective number 9. Determine possible action steps to address areas for enhancement. We are now on the learning and development planning, or the LDP. This covers in identifying and mapping learning and development programs and their implementation requirements to address priority competency gaps identified in the LDNE report. Example of the learning and development programs in the division level is what we are doing now, the capability training for L&D programs. And other examples are the webinars, trainings provided by the division office to the different employees, different offices. And another example for the learning and development programs in the school level are also the webinars they are giving to their teachers, to the parents, through virtual teleconferencing, and also learning action cell in their respective school level, for as long as that their training is competency based. Purpose of learning and development planning. It provides processes for identifying learning and development interventions that address competency gaps along performance areas. Number 2, it ensures alignment of learning and development programs with DepEd's mandate, goals, and national policies. In short, the purpose of learning and development is to align individual employees' goals and performance with the organization's overall mission. With this, there are 2 outputs that are produced from the subsystem. 1, Strategic Plan for Professional Development, or the SPPD, which maps out learning and development programs to develop competencies essential to achieving strategic performance goals over a 5-year period for the department, regional and schools division levels, and a 3-year period for schools. Second, annual plan for professional development, or the EPPD, which maps out yearly implementation of the SPPD. Levels of learning and development planning. The highest among the three is the Strategic Learning and Development Plan, which is anchored on agencies' long-term goals and priorities. Next is the Annual Learning and Development Plan, in which it identifies learning and development programs for implementation within a year. And the bottom level is the Learning and Development Implementation Plan, in which it details plans for the execution of specific learning and development programs and interventions. At this point of time, may I present to you the Learning and Development Planning Process Flow Chart, in which there is a need to have this LDNA report as the basis to proceed or to start for the first step, which is the review of LDNA results. The review of LDNA results can be done by clarifying organizational performance areas to focus as target, relate performance areas to the strategic direction to which they contribute DepEd's strategic goals and objectives and priorities in professional development, strategic goals and objectives in regional division educational development plans or school improvement plan, and review prioritization of competency gaps to ensure that new or additional information are considered. So the first step in the L&D planning process flowchart is the review of LDNA results, which clarify organizational performance areas to focus as target, relate performance areas to the strategic directions to which they contribute by DepEd strategic goals and objectives and priorities in professional development, and strategic goals and objectives in the regional division education development plans or school improvement plan. And last is the review of prioritization of competency gaps to ensure that new or additional information are considered. I'd like to share with you one of the best quotation regarding the L&D planning, which is stated, and as I quote, "The end is the beginning," which means that the learning and development facilitators must begin with the desired results and then determine what competences are needed to accomplish them. This came from Donald Kirkpatrick. The second step of learning and development planning process flowchart is the formulation of workplace development objectives, which identify the learning results chain to which the L&D programs will contribute. Workplace development objectives capture the hierarchy of expected gains from the L&D programs. WDOs, also referred to as the learning results chain, establishes the connection of the program to the department's strategic goals. Under workplace development objectives, there are 4 levels on the hierarchy of objectives. And these are the competencies, outputs, organizational outcome, and impact. These 4 levels are more strategic in nature. Hence, they are more applicable on the long-term goals of the organization. I would like to present to you the DepEd strategic directions from 2017 to 2022, in which the team vision is, by the year 2022, we will have nation-loving and competent lifelong learners able to respond to changes and opportunities through quality, accessible, relevant, and liberating K-12 program delivered by a modern, professional, proactive, nimble, trusted, and nurturing DepEd. And with this, we have 3 strategic goals, in which this is also popularly known to us as our key performance indicator, which covers the access, the quality, and the governance. So in short, we have three strategic goals, which are expand access to basic education, improve quality and relevance, and modernize education management and governance. Each strategic goal has a specific strategic objective, and it is very clear and very understandable as it is reflected in the screen in each strategic goal. Taking a look on the screen is still under workplace development objectives, which presents the four levels of objectives, namely the competencies, outputs, organizational outcome, and impact, with its corresponding example success indicator or means of education located on the left side of the screen. Allow me to present to you this reminder as part of the workplace development objectives, which stated the outcome and impact may be achieved through various learning and development interventions. This means that the outcome and impact of a particular program can be assisted through the various learning and development interventions, which can be presented later by the speaker. Achieving strategic results through workplace development objectives. As we can see in the chart, the top is the impact, in which this can be presented by the improvements in the condition of students may be expected if processes in schools and offices are strengthened, followed by an outcome in which it reflects the positive changes in organizational systems or processes may be expected if target employees or learners apply newly acquired competencies and outputs produced are used. And in the third, outputs, which presents the concrete outputs with employees or learners produced to demonstrate application of competencies during or after participating in the L&D programs. And the bottom level are the competencies in which it presented the job tasks or roles with employees or learners be able to do better as a result of participating in the L&D programs. Here is an example of workplace development objectives under human resource development planning. As we can see in the diagram, the lowest level is the competency, which is represented by the strategic HRD planning, followed by an outputs, which represented also by strategic directions for the PLGU HR, and an outcome representing HRD planning, including annual planning and budget processes, and the highest level is impact, with an enhanced PHRMO will enable the provincial government employees to deliver transparent, organized, professionalized, and client-centered services that will benefit target communities of PLGU's reform agenda. And the learning objectives, with the coordination and collaboration of competencies and outputs, there is really a greater possibility to hit the target or bullseye the target. In learning activities, what's focused most are the competencies and outputs collaborating each other. The third step in the learning and development planning process flowchart is the developing terminal objectives, also known as performance objective, in which behaviors that learners will be able to demonstrate or tasks they can do by end of intervention. Focus is performance in the workplace. Example of crafted terminal objectives. By the end of 4-day L&D orientation, participants will be able to assess the state of their offices, L&D processes, vis-a-vis the deep learning and development system. Assist the competencies of L&D implementers to carry out the different processes. Draft an action plan to strengthen their office's capacity to implement the L&D system. Another example of terminal objectives By the end of 4-day L&D orientation, L&D team members will be able to draft an action plan that addresses areas for system and competency enhancement, guided by set indicators of system maturity and implementers proficiency. In this example, it is well presented that it specifies job holders who are expected to demonstrate the competencies. It also manifested the formulate statement of what learners will be able to do by the end of an L&D program. And developing terminal objectives to respond to target competencies in the workplace of development objectives. Here is an item number 3, which is observe the ABCD guidelines in formulating its terminal objective, in which A stands for audience, which means the target learners. B stands for behavior, which means core objective and what learners will be able to do. C stands for condition, support needed to perform the behavior. And D, degree, standard or efficiency level. The fourth step in the learning and development planning process flowchart is identifying learning and development programs. As can be located in the screen, there are 5 items stipulated under this. Number 1, map out priority competency gaps, terminal objectives, and target learners using template. Number 2, determine the learning and development programs or mix of learning and development interventions for each terminal objectives. Number 2.1, face-to-face. Instructional and learning interaction that occurs in the person and real time between learning. 2.2, online. Learners use the internet to access learning materials. 2.3, blended. Using both online and in-person learning experiences to deliver instruction. The fifth step in the learning and development planning process flowchart is the plotting of 5-year implementation plan. The implementation plan is prepared for each year of the SPPD and contains the following. Number 1, terminal objectives. Number 2, proposed learning and development program. Number 3, outputs to be produced from each of the programs. Number 5, target learners, which can be the number, offices, and position. Number 5, planned annual schedule of implementation for the 5-year or 3-year period. Number 6, support requirements. Number 7, the financial. 8, human resources. 9, the logistics. 10, executive sponsorship, the approval, the policy support, and etc. And number 11, source of funds. The sixth step in the learning and development planning process flowchart is developing monitoring and evaluation plan. Monitoring and evaluation plans guide tracking and assessment of L&D programs in the SPPDs. They ensure that the implementation progress and expected results of L&D programs are measured so that their contribution to strategic directions and priorities can be gauged. The Learning and Development Program Monitoring and Evaluation Plan. The steps in formulating the L&D program M&E plan are as follows. Number 1, call the background information about the learning and development program from the SPPD, including the program title, planned schedule, target learners, number of target learners, financial requirements, and source of funds. Number 2, identify the indicators to be measured at each level of program M&E. These are derived from the workplace development objectives in the SPPD workplace. To continue, number 3 is identify the methods and tools to be measure each indicator. Below are some of the possible methods for each level of M&E. Number 4, identify data sources. Number 5, determine schedule of M&E. Number 6, identify the persons responsible for ensuring that M&E activities are implemented. Number 7, determine support or resources needed to implement M&E activities, including budget and source of funds. Number 8, identify users of M&E data at each level. These are the people and our offices that need data on the progress of results of L&D programs to be able to make decisions or take action we needed to ensure achievement of objectives. Here is the overall monitoring and evaluation plan for the SPPD. Number 1, identify the indicators for measuring the success of L&D programs in the SPPD. Indicators are identified as these levels. Number 2, identify the methods and tools to measure each indicator. Number 3, identify data sources. Number 4, determine schedule of monitoring and evaluation. The timing of N&E activities for the SPPD coincides with your regular reporting procedures and cycles of department, regional, schools division, and school plans. Number 5, identify the persons responsible for measuring that M&E activities are implemented. Number 6, determine support or resources needed to implement activities for the SPPD M&E including budget and source of funds. Number 7, identify users of M&E data at each level. These are the people and our offices that need data on the progress and results of L&D programs to be able to make decision or take action to ensure achievement of objectives. They may include internal and external. There are varieties or different strategies and interventions in order to attain the objectives in the L&D plan. According to Donald Kirkpatrick, interventions can be best acquired in a 70-20-10 distribution. As we can see the picture on the screen, the 70 is represented by a woman studying her tasks, her functions all by herself. And the 20% distribution is depicted by a picture of a man and woman collaboratively working and studying a specific task. The 10% distribution is represented by a woman attending for a seminars, webinars, trainings, and example of this is her attendance in the graduate studies. Deep Ed learning and development modalities. There are 4 options and alternatives as modalities. First is the job embedded learning, represented by a woman again. Next is the relationship and discussion based learning, wherein the colleagues, the man and woman as colleagues in the organizations are collaboratively working together. And the formal learning activities is represented by an attendance of a woman attending seminars and trainings. And the fourth is the learning action cell, which is usually done at school. This time, allow me to give to you the examples of every modalities under learning and development. First is the job embedded learning, which can be learned through committee work, job expansion, job shadowing, job rotation, special projects, stretch assignments, and informal job-embedded learning activities. Another modality under learning and development is the relationship and discussion-based learning, wherein the examples are coaching, mentoring, peer-assisted learning, and communities of practice. Furthermore, another modalities under learning and development is formal learning activities, in which the examples are training programs, the face-to-face, online, blended, seminar, professional conferences, graduate and postgraduate degree program, and benchmarking. And the last but certainly not the least modality under learning and development is the learning action cell, in which this can be manifested by group learning activities, one-on-one learning activities, supported self-managed learning activities, and multi-school learning activities. Here are the considerations in selecting modalities as an intervention. Number 1 is the learning objective. Number 2, expected outputs. Number 3, profile of target group. Number 4, available time. And number 5, available resources. As we can see, the arrow is pointing to the left and right, which means that all of these things are intermingling with each other. They are all equally important. According to Brian Tracy, managers today have to do more with less and get better results from limited resources more than ever before. The seventh step of learning and development planning process flowchart is developing risk management plan. So in this step, one question could be raised such as what could possibly go wrong? A risk management plan is a document that a project manager prepares to foresee risk, estimate impacts, and define responses to risk. A risk is an uncertain event or condition that if it occurs, has a positive or negative effect on a project objectives. A risk management plan. Risk analysis. It is a systematic examination of a future course of action or plan to anticipate things that might go wrong in a learning and development plan implementation. Risk mitigation strategies. This can be done into two, preventive and contingent. Preventive is an action taken to eliminate likely causes of a potential problem, while contingent, action taken to minimize the serious effects of a potential problem should it happen. Still under risk management plan, as we can see in the screen, there are 4 columns in which the first is the critical step, second, potential problem, the third column is preventive action, and the fourth is contingent action. For critical step, example, is establish trainers pool and learning and development core team to support implementation of strategic learning and development. Under potential problem, there might be an inadequate number of competent potential members who will be part of the trainers pool of L&D core team. And under preventive action, conduct competency building interventions for members of the trainers pool and HR core team, and institutionalize the trainers pool and learning and development core team. Under contingent action, issuance of office order designating members of trainers pool and core team, top Australian Aid scholars, and members applying a selection criteria. We are now on the 8th step of learning and development planning process flowchart, which is developing communication and advocacy plan. As you can see in the screen, these are the elements of the communication and advocacy plan. First is communication objectives, followed by key messages, and who are the audience, and the communication strategies, because communication can be done verbally, can be done through gestures, body language, and this can be also done through black and white, paper, pencil. This can be done also through gadgets like the use of technology, cell phones, computers, and etc. And also, part of the elements are the outputs, the responsible units for dissemination, and the resource requirements. A part also of step 8, which is developing communication and advocacy plan, we are now on the communication plan. In the communication plan, there are 8 columns, which are, first column is the target audience, then the communication objectives, the key messages, the communication strategies, the sender, responsible unit or office, resource, required and the time frame. Learning and Development Program General Guidelines. First, it should align with DepEd planning and budgeting process. The reason why it has to align so that it will answer and promote the DepEd trust and programs. Number 2, it should cover teaching and non-teaching personnel. That is why in the division level, all employees in the different divisions are included in this learning and development program. Number 3, it should be conducted at different governance levels. Hence, the training like this, there is a specific day assigned for the division personnel, and also for the school level, including the school heads and master teachers. Fourth, we have to be informed by the learning needs assessment results. And the fifth, it has to be competency based. And the sixth, product of consultations including PDC. In the division level, the PDC is composed of the superintendent as the head and with the participation of the two chiefs as members. And number 7, it should be reviewed and approved by the manager. In the division level, manager is equivalent to our school's division superintendent, and in the school level, manager is the school head. I'd like to share with you the essence and significance of planning. According to Alan Liken, planning is bringing the future into the present so you can do something about it now. Learning and Development System checkpoints. Number 1, Learning Development Program System and Competency Indicators, including budget. Number 2, the Learning and Development Program Rules and Responsibilities. And number 3, Assessment Guide for Learning and Development Planning. Learning and Development System checkpoints. While ago, I have presented the 3 important variables under L&D system checkpoints. Now, allow me to present to you the specific example under each item. For system and competency indicators for LDP, here are the items. Number 1, the rating or the sticker dots. Number 2, assessment notes. Number 3, action steps. 4, timeline. 5, persons responsible. Roles and responsibilities in the learning development program. Of course, since it is a checkpoint, then there is an options, and the role of the organizer is just to check whether it is agreed by the members. Then question or X for disagree. Questions, comments, suggestions on post it. And the LDP assessment guide. The things that are being asked are whether the members or the one who checked on it agrees, then whether there are questions or disagreements, then questions, comments, suggestions on post-its. As an application of your learning and insights of my presentation, here is now for your workshop activity. Make or plot your own annual implementation plan of L&D program. Make your own template using the variables contents below. To be submitted on November 27, 2020 in my email ad aba.aliaba@deped.gov.ph. You may do your template in a tabular presentation with 11 columns or do this purely in descriptive manner. Thank you and congrats in advance for coming up your own L&D program annual plan. You are now a certified L&D program planning practitioner. Thank you for your spared time and for listening.